Here's your second part, and this is going to be new to 95% of the class, including the ones I had in Algebra 1 last year. Here's what we do to simplify square roots in this class, as long as it's not a story problem. Here's what we don't do. Write 5.66. That will not be allowed unless it's a story problem. So what we need to do on problems that are not story is we need to make two square roots, because 32 is not a perfect square. Okay, it's nowhere on this list. I'm going to need to do this. So what I do is I look down at these numbers. Okay, 32 would be between here, so I divide 32 by 25, hoping that it won't be a decimal. It's a decimal. Now try 16. 32 divided by 16. That works. So I divided by 16 and I got 2. So what I do is I write 16 times 2. Now what you do is you kill the square root of 16, because the square root of 16 is equal to 4. Okay? So it's 4 square root 2. 75 is not on my perfect square list. It is not a perfect square, so I make 2 square roots and see what 75 would be between these two. It will not divide by 64. It's a decimal. 75 divided by 49 is a decimal. 75 divided by 36 is a decimal. 75 divided by 25 is 3, so I divided by 25 and I got 3. We kill this because that's equal to 5. So 5 square root 3. Now the square root of 7. That's not a perfect square. But here's a problem. 7 is not divisible by 4. It's a decimal. It will divide by 1, but I do not want you dividing by 1. If you come to 1, then you circle that, and that's your answer, because that's prime. Okay, and the square root of 100 now, whoa, I'm an idiot. I skipped over 100. 100 equals 10 times 10. 100 is a perfect square, and the square root of 100 equals 10. Okay, so put the answer. You won't have any square roots if it's a perfect square. Okay, now here's what we're going to do in the next problem. All these problems have two answers because they all x squared, but the thing is, x to the second's the only kind of x you have. So here's what we do. We solve this using like terms. Here's how you solve like terms. You box up the 3x squared. You minus 5 to the other side because that's a like term with 41. So we get 36 and 3x to the second. Now we have a number in front of the x. It's 3. So x to the second equals 12. Then to cancel out a second power, you square root both sides. Okay? Now another thing you need to understand, whenever you square root a number, you need to put a plus negative, because a square root of a number, like the square root of 9 is 3, but it could also be negative 3. Okay? So I'm going to put plus minuses for all these. Okay, because that's happens. Okay, it could be positive or negative. Okay, now this 12 is not exactly a perfect square, so what I need to do is make 2 square roots and see what 12 divides by. It won't divide. It's between these two, but it's not divisible by 9. It is divisible by 4. 12 divided by 4 is 3. So I kill the square root of 4 because that's equal to 2. So 2 square root 3. Okay, so my first answer is 2 square root 3, and the other answer is just the opposite. Okay, those two answers. 2 square root 3 negative. Okay, my next problem. It has two answers, but that's the only kind of x I have. So like terms, I don't need to add or subtract. I need to divide by the 2, and x to the power of 2 equals 50. Now to get rid of a second power, we square root both sides. And a square root's always a plus negative. And then 50 is not a perfect square. Okay, it's not on this list. So I make 2 square roots. 50 will not divide by 49 or 36, but 50 divided by 25 is 2. So I divide by 25, I got 2. This is the one you kill, and that's 5. So 5 square root 2. So I've got 5 square root 2 and negative 5 square root 2. Next problem. There are 2 answers. Okay. I don't need to add or subtract. I don't even need to divide. I just need to cancel the second power out with a square root. So that's x plus negative, and then 84 is not a perfect square, so I make 2 square roots, and I see what 84 will divide by. So 84 is not going to, it's between 100 and 81. 84 divided by 81 is a decimal. 84 divided by 64 is a decimal. 84 divided by 49 is a decimal. 84 divided by 36 decimal. 84 divided by 25 decimal. 84 divided by 16 decimal. 84 divided by 9 decimal. 84 divided by 4 no decimal. So I divided by 4 and I got 21. So we kill that because the square root of 4 is equal to 2. So 2, and I put the square root of 21 next to it. So the answer is 2 square root 21 and negative 2 square root 21. Next problem. There's 2 answers. Like terms, okay? I box it up. There's no number outside of it. I need to divide by negative 3. And x to the power of 2 equals 71. So I square root both sides. X equals, it could be plus or minus. 71's not a perfect square. So 71 divided by 64, not working. 71 divided by 49 doesn't work. 71 divided by 36 doesn't work. 71 divided by 25 doesn't work. 71 divided by 16 doesn't work. 71 divided by 9 doesn't work. 71 divided by 4 doesn't work. And then I told you not to use 1. So what we do is we just keep square root 71. It's prime. So the answer is square root 71 and square root 71 negative. Okay, next problem. 2 answers. And again, that's the only kind of x I have. There's no regular x in the problem, so I'm not going to factor. I'm just going to solve getting the x by itself using like terms. So that's like terms, 35, 7x to the second. I divide by 7. So x to the second. So I take 35 divided by 7, and I get 5. The second power means we need to square root both sides. That cancels, and I get x, and then plus negative. Now 5 is not a perfect square, so I make 2 square roots. 5's not going to divide by 4, and I don't use 1, so I just keep the square root of 5. Okay, so square root of 5, and then square root of 5 with a negative. Okay, the next couple problems, there's 2 answers. Now I want to box 1x squared over 20. I need a minus 8. So I get 7. 1x squared over 20. Then I need to multiply the 20 to the 7. I multiply those. So I got x squared. 1x squared is x squared. And that's 140. So to get rid of the second power, we square root. X equals, be a plus negative. 140, not a perfect square, so I'm going to make 2 square roots and see what I can divide by. 140 be between 144 and 121, so 140 divided by 121 decimal. 140 divided by 100 decimal. 140 divided by 81 decimal. 64 is the next one, decimal. 49 decimal. 36 decimal. 25 decimal. 16 decimal. Wow. Again, not fun, but you just gut it out. Grit. Oh, I divided by 4, I got 35. Okay? So I divide by 4, I get 35, and then I know the square root of 4 equals 2. So 2 square root 35. So 2 square root 35 and 2 square root 35 negative. Okay, last one. Box it up, like terms, that's your only kind of, there's two answers. There's only one kind of x, it's to the second power, so I plus 6. So that's 4. And then I need to multiply those, and that's 100. And then I get x squared. If it's 1, it's just x squared. Square root, x equals plus negative. Now, if you look, 100 is a perfect square, so the answer to that is just simply 10. Square root of 100 equals 10. Okay, so 10 and negative 10. Okay, now in that packet, you're going to do 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay, pause the video and do those, and we'll come back to this. Okay, the equation h equals 0.0019 s squared gives the height in feet of the largest ocean waves. The variable s stands for wind speed in knots. Okay. Now, here's what we need to do when they give me an equation. I need to copy it down. S, I'm going to call that s to the second. That's an s. So it says s equals knots, wind speeds in knots, and then h is feet. Tells you what those are. So is it 20 feet or 20 knots? I think it's 20 feet, so that's going in for h. H is out, 20's in. Now I solve. There's two answers. All I have is s is second. I don't need to add or subtract. I just need to divide. And I get those cancel. I get s to the second. So 20 divided by 0.0019 is going to be one, just round to the nearest whole number, 10,526. Then I square root each side. Now, on a story problem, here's what you do. Okay? You square root it on the calculator. You don't need to go through the list. You're just going to round that to 103. So s is 103 or negative 103. The positive answer is the real answer. So 103 knots. Calculate the wind speed required for 5-foot waves. Okay, same thing. I jot down the equation. Okay, s is knots, h is feet. 5 foot, so it goes in for h because h is feet. So we're taking this out. And there's two answers for s that I'll need to solve for. First I box this up, then I divide by 0.0019. I don't need to add or subtract, there's no need. Okay, those cancel and I have s to the second. On the other side, 5 divided by 0.0019 is going to be 2,632. Then the second power we square root, knowing that that cancels. And then plus negative. And then remember, this is a story problem, so I square root it on my calculator. 51. Okay, so it could be 51 or negative 51. The positive's the real answer, so S is knots, so it's 51 knots. Okay, then my last problem, if the wind speed is 1400 knots, what will the height of the waves be? So write down the equation yet again. Now it's 1400 knots. Knots is S, so that is going in for S here. So H equals 0.0019 and then parentheses 1400 to the second. Now it looks to me like the H is by itself, so if that letter that I have left is by itself, I'm just going to plug that into my calculator. I don't need to isolate the variable, it's already isolated. Okay, 3,724 feet. Okay, that's all I have to say on that.